As the sun set on the eve of July 17th, 1942, a grim shadow loomed over the city of Stalingrad. In the years leading up to this day, the world had been no stranger to conflict. Out of the ashes of the Great War, a new power had risen in Germany, under the iron grip of Adolf Hitler. With his rise, the world once again found itself on the precipice of war. The spark was ignited, and the Second World War began. In the east, Germany had launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in the history of warfare. Their target, the Soviet Union. Hitler's ambition was to establish Lebensraum, or living space for the German people in Eastern Europe. This was a war of ideologies, a clash between fascism and communism, and it was about to reach a critical point. And so, the eyes of the Third Reich turned towards Stalingrad. Named after the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, the city held both strategic and symbolic importance. Situated on the banks of the Volga River, Stalingrad was a major industrial city and a transport hub between the Caspian Sea and northern Russia. It was the gateway to the east, and it was in Hitler's sights. But the city was more than just a strategic target. It was a symbol of Soviet resistance, a testament to their resolve. Its capture would deal a significant blow to Soviet morale and provide a propaganda coup for the Nazis. For these reasons, the city was primed to become the stage for one of the bloodiest battles in human history. As the sun set on that fateful day, the city's fate hung in the balance. The people of Stalingrad, their nerves frayed, could only watch and wait. The air was thick with tension, the silence only broken by the distant rumble of German tanks. The stage was set, the pieces were in motion, and the city braced itself for what was to come. The German Sixth Army made their first move on August 23, 1942, marking the beginning of a brutal struggle. The initial onslaught by the German forces was both swift and devastating. Under the command of General Friedrich Paulus, the Sixth Army launched a fierce attack on the city, aiming to seize control from the Soviets. The Luftwaffe, Germany's aerial warfare branch, unleashed a devastating bombing campaign that effectively turned the city into a landscape of ruins. Buildings crumbled, streets were reduced to rubble, and the once thriving city of Stalingrad was transformed into a grim battleground. Unprepared for the intensity of the German assault, the Soviet Union found itself facing significant losses. The Red Army, under the command of General Vasily Chuikov, was caught off guard by the ferocity and speed of the German attack. Casualties mounted rapidly as the Soviets struggled to mount a defense against the relentless German forces. Despite their initial unpreparedness, the Soviet soldiers, bolstered by their love for the motherland, fought with a ferocity that matched their foes. The German forces, expecting a swift victory, were met with a stubborn resistance that they had not anticipated. Every street, every building, every inch of the city became a site of fierce combat. The city's ruins provided the Red Army with a labyrinth of defense positions, enabling them to launch surprise attacks on the German forces, thus slowing down their advance. The German forces, despite their initial success and superior firepower, found themselves in a war of attrition. The Soviet resistance was fierce and unyielding, and the German forces soon found that their swift victory was slipping through their fingers. The battle for Stalingrad was proving to be a far more challenging campaign than they had anticipated. Despite the ferocious onslaught, the Soviet forces held on, refusing to let the city fall. The battle for Stalingrad was far from over, and the city that had been turned into a battleground was about to witness a struggle that would forever be etched in the annals of history. Against all odds, the Red Army stood their ground, turning the ravaged city into a deadly labyrinth of house-to-house fighting. The Soviet soldiers, fueled by the spirit of their motherland, clung to their positions with tenacity and grit. They leveraged the ruins of Stalingrad, transforming the once vibrant city into a fortress of rubble and steel. This was not just a battle. It was a war of attrition, a test of wills. The Red Army's stubborn defense was not without a high human cost. The city became a charnel house, with the bodies of soldiers and civilians alike littering the streets. Yet the Soviets refused to yield. They held on, creating a living hell for the German invaders. Every street, every building, every room became a battleground. The city became a nightmare of smoke, rubble and blood. But even in the darkest hours there was a glimmer of hope. A turning point was on the horizon, a daring plan conceived in the minds of the Soviet High Command. This plan was Operation Uranus, a bold counter-offensive designed to encircle and trap the German Sixth Army in Stalingrad. The Soviets launched Operation Uranus on November the 19th, 1942. They attacked the weaker Romanian and Hungarian armies that guarded the German flanks, breaking through with startling speed. In a matter of days, the Soviets had encircled the German Sixth Army, cutting them off from supplies and reinforcements. The hunters, so confident in their early success, were now the hunted. This was the turning point of the battle. The German Sixth Army, once the mightiest fighting force on the Eastern Front, was now trapped in a city that had become a fortress. They were surrounded, cut off, and slowly being starved into submission. It was a dramatic reversal of fortunes, a testament to the resilience and determination of the Red Army. In a twist of fate, the hunters became the hunted. Surrounded and freezing in the harsh Russian winter, the German Sixth Army found itself on the brink of collapse. The relentless assault of the Soviet forces and the unforgiving cold were taking their toll. The German High Command, desperate to salvage the situation, launched Operation Winter Storm in mid-December 1942. It was a last-ditch attempt to break the encirclement, to carve a path through the Soviet lines and relieve the beleaguered Sixth Army. Yet the elements and the determined Red Army were unyielding. The German relief effort faced fierce resistance and was ultimately repelled, leaving the fate of the Sixth Army hanging in the balance. The soldiers trapped in the Stalingrad pocket were now left to fend for themselves. As the winter deepened, so did the plight of these men. Food and ammunition became scarce. Frostbite and disease were as much an enemy as the Soviet forces encircling them. The once formidable Sixth Army was slowly being ground to dust in the frigid wasteland of Stalingrad. The final blow came in early February 1943. The German forces, battered, starved and utterly exhausted, could hold out no longer. On February 2nd, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, defying Hitler's orders to fight to the last man, surrendered. It was an unthinkable act, a German field marshal surrendering. Over 90,000 German soldiers were taken captive, a mere shadow of the once mighty force that had marched into Stalingrad. With the German surrender, the Battle of Stalingrad came to a close, marking a significant turning point in the Second World War. The myth of German invincibility was shattered, and the tide had now decisively turned in favor of the Allies. The grim battle for Stalingrad, with its millions of casualties, would forever be remembered as a testament to human endurance and the brutal cost of war. The Battle of Stalingrad, the bloodiest battle in human history, left an indelible mark on the world. This monumental conflict, which raged for over 5 months, resulted in an estimated 2 million casualties among soldiers from both sides and Soviet civilians. The scale of human loss and suffering was unparalleled, and the city itself was reduced to rubble. The aftermath of the battle had far-reaching consequences beyond the immediate toll on human life. The German war machine, which had seemed invincible until then, suffered a crushing blow. It was the first major defeat for Hitler's forces, significantly weakening their eastern front and marking a turning point in the Second World War. The loss of an entire army, along with much-needed resources and equipment, disrupted Hitler's plans for a swift victory over the Soviet Union. On the other side, the Soviet Union, despite the heavy casualties and devastation, emerged from the battle with a renewed sense of morale and determination. The victory at Stalingrad became a symbol of Soviet resilience and a testament to the courage of its people. It was a pivotal moment that galvanized the Soviet forces to push back against the invaders and eventually turn the tide of the war in their favor. The Battle of Stalingrad holds a significant place in the annals of military history. It is remembered not just for its scale and ferocity, but also for the strategic brilliance demonstrated by the Soviet forces in defending their city against overwhelming odds. The battle showcased the importance of urban warfare and the effective use of resources, tactics that continue to influence military strategies today. As we reflect on the legacy of Stalingrad, we are reminded of the devastating consequences of war. It serves as a stark testament to human endurance and the spirit of resistance in the face of adversity. The Battle of Stalingrad serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of war and the indomitable spirit of those who defend their homeland.